はい、それではがんノートminiスタートしていきたいと思います。今日のゲストはマシューさんです。よろしくお願いします。はい、皆さんそうなんです。今日はマシューさん、イギリスの、マシューさんにお越しいただいておりまして、今日お話をしていきたいと思います。ということなので、ちょっとですね、こちらの隣に、マシューさん、お隣にちょっと通訳の方がいらっしゃいますので、適宜ちょっと通訳の方に入っていただきつつ、お話をお届けできたらなということを思っておりますので、いつもと違う、がんノートとなるかと思いますので、よろしくお願いいたします。はい。そんな中でですね、まずがんノートの紹介をちょっとさせていただきたいんですけれども、がんノートですね、がん経験者さんのインタビューウェブ番組となっています。YouTube で発信をしているんですけれども、がん経験者さんのインタビューをですね、暗くなりせずに、ブラックユーモアだったりとかですね、そういったいろんなものをこう交えながらお話をしていきたいなということを思っています。家族や友人、学校や仕事、お金や恋愛、結婚や生活に至るまでですね、様々なことを、医療情報については、医療者の方に聞いたら、一番ベストだと思うんですけれども、それ以外の患者さんの生活側の情報にちょっとフォーカスしてお届けするというのががんノートとなっております。そんな中でですね、私のちょっと簡単に MC を務めさせていただきます自己紹介をしていきますと、私も25歳と27歳の時に肺細胞腫瘍という珍しいがんになりました。その経験からですね、医療情報だけじゃない情報も大切だということで、この活動をしております。今日は MC を務めさせていただいておりますので、マシューさんのですね、英語を頑張って聞き取って、わからないなりにうんうんってうなずいていきたいということを思っておりますので、よろしくお願いいたします。早速、マシューさんの自己紹介をマシューさんにお願いしたいと思います。
Hello, so I'm Matthew Dons from England. I've lived in Tokyo for about 18 years now. And 8 years ago, at the age of 36, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. Although actually, we prefer to call it stage 5 because it had spread to the peritoneum. And I'm just a normal person. I'm a business consultant, business coach. I'm very interested in technology and the history of technology and how we can use technology to improve our abilities as humans, especially how we can use the current technology, not just inventing new technology all the time.
ありがとうございます。マシューさんはお仕事でイギリスから日本に来たんですか？
No, so I came to Japan for my other big hobby, which is studying Japanese martial arts.
どんな武術ですか？
So I study kobujutsu, so the very old bujutsu that came before karate, before judo, even before jujitsu. So the origins of Japanese bujutsu.
武術ね。様々なそんな武術を学ぶために日本に来られたというですね。日本人よりもすごいそういったところをご存知じゃないのかなということを思ったりとかしますが、そんな中でちょっと、マシューさんのがんのことをお伺いしていきたいなと思います。どのように、経過をたどってきたのかといったところを、感情の浮き沈みをグラフにして聞いていきたいなと思っています。上下が感情の上がり下がり、そして、時間の経過、そして吹き出しにですね、ポジティブやネガティブといったそういったことを書いています。じゃあですね、マシューさんの、ペイシェントジャーニー、こんな形となります。ドン。すごいアップダウンがあったりとかね。するという中ですけれども、マシューさん、これ作ってみて最初どう思いましたか？
So I had been very skeptical when I knew we were going to do this, but I found it very useful and therapeutic to do this. My cancer journey has been very complicated. There are 8 different cancer treatments available now. I've had 7 of them. I've been treated at many different hospitals, so it was very interesting to make this journey together. So I was quite surprised. When I heard we were going to do this, I was skeptical. I didn't really see the point, but when I experienced it, it was very enlightening for me.
ありがとうございます。じゃあ早速、マシューさんの、ジャーニー聞いていきたいと思います。まず一つ目、こちら。人生がうまく回ってきたということで、お仕事だったりとか様々なところが順調だったってことですかね。
Yes, so before the cancer, I had been working hard to improve my life for a few years. Finally, things were going well. And then I was suddenly diagnosed with a cancer. It was a big shock to me. And all my plans and dreams vanished in a split second.
はい、ありがとうございます。そんな中で、じゃあ、うまくいって中でですね、下がっていきます。それが、ドン。はい。いきなりがん告知や手術、薬物療法ってもう、しょっぱなからもうがんと分かっていく形になっているんですけれども、まず、なぜ、がんが見つかって、どうやってがんが見つかっていったんでしょうか？
So I found my cancer actually when I was on a trip to the UK. So I had planned to go back for 3 months to spend time with my parents and for my kids to improve their English. And I had a minor chest infection. I went to the doctor. I got some antibiotics. I had a very strong reaction, very strong side effects from the antibiotics. The doctor was a bit confused and surprised by this, so she recommended I have some tests. So I had a chest x-ray and a blood test. And then the blood test showed anemia, which is the lack of iron. And this suggested maybe I was bleeding a bit inside. So I had a gastroscopy, which is a camera in your stomach, a colonoscopy, which is the camera in your intestine. And a huge tumor was discovered in my sigmoid colon. That's the S-shaped part of the colon on the left-hand side. And then a week later, the CT scan showed the cancer had already spread to many places in my body, and there was a lot of cancer. I was 36 at the time, and at that time, for this amount of cancer, the life expectancy was about 7 to 9 months, the average life expectancy in Europe with treatment for that kind of cancer.
そうなんですね。ということは、当時からステージ4ということが分かっていったっていうことは、様々な場所に転移をしていた。
So the primary tumor was the sigmoid colon, but at the time of diagnosis, it had already spread to my liver, lymph nodes, and the peritoneum. So colon cancer patients often call that stage 5 cancer because when cancer is in the peritoneum, it's very difficult to treat. At that time, it was almost impossible to treat. This is the time when the treatment HIPEC was just becoming available. This is around the time when checkpoint inhibitors are just kind of being approved. So there were no significant treatments when the cancer is in the peritoneum because a chemotherapy agent can't get into the peritoneum. It's like a barrier.
ということで、そのステージ4、5っていうね、言っておっしゃってますけれども、そこで分かっていった。この後治療で手術や薬物療法、抗がん剤治療など入っていくかと思うんですけれども、これは日本で行ったということで合ってますか？
Yes, so it was actually a very easy decision to come back to Japan for treatment because Japan is maybe 10 years ahead of the UK in terms of cancer treatment. And also most of my friends are in Japan, not in the UK. So it was quite an easy decision to come back. And then I had surgery a couple of weeks after arriving back and then began with chemotherapy, molecular targeted therapy, immunotherapy, and hypothermia therapy all at the same time.
はい、ありがとうございます。その治療をされていって、日本で治療をされていって、 上がっていきます。そちらが放射線の陽子線治療もされていく。これは同時期にされていったんですかね。
Yes, so due to my surgery and the chemotherapy and immunotherapy and those treatments, the cancer was reduced quite a lot in my body until it was just remaining in the liver. So there was a chance to potentially cure the cancer with proton beam therapy. At the same time as having the proton beam therapy, I continued some chemotherapy as well.
ここで一回上がっているのは、治療が奏功した、良くなったからっていうことですかね。この上がっているのは。
So the treatment seemed to be working. So proton beam therapy is a very slow treatment. The treatment was given over the course of 8 weeks. This is called hyperfractioning. So you're given a very small dose of radiation 5 days a week for 8 weeks. This is to minimize the damage to your body and to maximize the chance of it working. During this time, there are various tests to see if the treatment is going well, if it's well targeted. So all of that looked really good. And then a few months later, I took a PET CT scan that showed a large low-density tumor on my liver, and I was heartbroken.
がんが見つかっていく。それがついこちらですね。肝臓に腫瘍がまた見つかっていって。この時もすごく下がってますよね。やっぱショックでした。
Yes, so also at this time, I found that my tumor markers at that time were not the reliable predictor because the tumor markers were good. So that was why I was confident the treatment was working, I was going to be cured. But actually, tumor markers can be reliable sometimes and not reliable other times. For some patients, the tumor markers never go up. For some patients, they go up before the tumors grow. Some patients, it goes up after the tumors are grown. But of course, we can't tell these patterns until we're looking back.
はい。ありがとうございます。そこからちょっと上がっていきます。はい。次、こちら。手術を受けられていく。これは手術は次はどんな手術をしたんでしょう？
So my immunotherapist and the radiotherapist recommended I do liver surgery. This is called salvage surgery. So the surgery for after the radiotherapy has failed. But this surgery is very, very dangerous because when you've treated your body with a lot of chemotherapy, the liver becomes hard. This is called fibrosis. And of course, I had just had 8 weeks of proton beam therapy as well. So the surgery was a bit risky, generally speaking. And my oncologist in Tokyo didn't recommend it. He asked his liver surgeon to talk to me. And the liver surgeon said, "This is far too dangerous, don't do this surgery." But I didn't want to try another chemotherapy because if the chemotherapy didn't work and 3 months had passed until the scan showing it hadn't worked, I would then be out of time. So I felt that taking the liver surgery was the best option. So I went to 2 very experienced liver surgeons who had done liver surgery on patients who had had lots of radiotherapy. And they said they were confident they could safely do the surgery. And they said I should have the surgery. And I had it, and there were no problems, no complications at all.
はい、ありがとうございます。そして手術ができていくっていうところですね。はい。手術の後、はい、調子が良くなっていくっていうことなんですよね。
So I had, 6 months with no chemotherapy. And I guess I should say that, in all of this cancer journey, I've never had any negative effect from the cancer. Everything has been a side effect of the treatment. I've never experienced pain from my cancer or anything like that. It's all treatment-related toxicity, treatment-related damage.
そこから、はい、ちょっと下がっていきます。それが、 こちら、再発していくということで、またここで薬物療法がスタートしていくといったこと、これもまた肝臓に再発したんですか
？Liver and so the cancer was found again in my liver and also in some lymph nodes.
そこから薬物療法をしていって、ただここから上がっていくっていうことに関しては、放射線治療を次受けていくんですね。これはもう医療者からも決まった流れで受けていったってことなんでしょう？
Yes, so I took a kind of radiotherapy called tomotherapy, which is a split beam radiotherapy. So that was a difficult decision because generally proton beam therapy should be less damaging to your body, but it was not covered by Japanese health insurance, and tomotherapy was covered, so I was able to take the tomotherapy and successfully, it seemed, treat the lymph nodes and the liver metastases.
はい、ありがとうございます。そうしていくと、腫瘍が見当たらなくなるということで、良くなっていったってことなんですかね。
Yes. Yeah.
はい。そこからだんだんちょっと上がっていきます。これは、人工肛門閉鎖術をしてくれる外科医を見つける。これはどういうことですか？人工肛門っていうのは、一番初めの手術の時に人工肛門の手術をされて、そこからずっと人工肛門があった。それを、閉鎖してくれる人を見つけた。これはどういうことでしょう？
So when I had the original surgery to remove the primary tumor in 2016, so I had my sigmoid colon removed. That's the left-hand side, the S shape. So this was removed, and the upper part of the intestine was taken out through my abdominal wall, and then it's connected to a plastic bag to connect the waist. In my case, this was very low down in my body, which made it very uncomfortable. So I had this for 5 years. And my dream was always to have the reversal surgery. But in my case, the reversal surgery was dangerous. And the original surgeon hadn't expected me to live more than maybe 1 or possibly 2 years. So he had promised me it would be temporary, but I think he had no intention of reversing it. He would always make excuses. So I realized I had to find another surgeon to do this. So I talked to some doctors, and one of them asked 13 surgeons, and all the surgeons rejected me for 2 reasons. One was safety. They said it was a difficult reversal. And the other one is they thought the benefit wouldn't be so big, because after the reversal, your life is not back to normal. You have a lot of quality of life issues. But I decided I would do the reversal or I would end my life. And it was, I was getting ready to end my life. And finally, a friend of mine, also a cancer patient, he said I should contact his surgeon. So I did, and I found, the very wonderful surgeon. And he was confident he could do the surgery. It still we had to wait a long time because my body had been damaged a lot from the cancer treatment. So my platelet count was very low. Platelets are the things in your blood that makes your blood sticky, helps you heal from wounds. Platelets are very, very important in surgery. So we were waiting to see if the platelet count would increase because I was not doing chemotherapy. We hoped the platelet count would slowly rise up, but it didn't. It stayed the same. So we were waiting, and the surgeon finally said, your platelet count is not going to go up. Do you still want to do the surgery? It's risky. it also may need to be abandoned during the surgery if cancer is found there. So I said I understood the risk, and we went ahead with the surgery, and it was very, very successful, and I was very, very happy.
はい。13人ね、セカンドオピニオンで聞いていってという風なところすごいですね。はい。で、最終的に外科医を見つけられていく、そういった人工肛門、閉鎖術をしてくれる先生を見つけていくという形となります。そして実際に、はい、手術をされていったと。これはもう、ペイシェントジャーニーが上がっているところなので、成功したっていうことですよね。
Yeah, I mean, there is still a lot of getting used to the new way of life because you do have quality of life issues. You have to think a lot about when you eat, how much you eat, what you eat. Yeah, and your condition improves over time for about 2 years. So about 2 years after the surgery, the reversal surgery, your quality of life is about as good as it will be. It's not going to improve a lot after that. So this 2-year period is when your body is getting used to the shortened intestine. In my case, 35 centimeters of intestine was removed. So your body has to get used to how that works, right? Some nerve tissue has been cut, and the timing of waste moving through your intestine, your body needs to relearn all of that. And yeah, that improves over time, but reaches a kind of plateau. So you have to kind of manage that and work around that. And how much to eat, what to eat, yes.
はい、ありがとうございます。はい、そんな中でまた下がっていきます。それがこちら。また再発といったところで薬物療法となっていくということで、次はどこに何が見つかったんでしょうか？
So I noticed that the tumor markers were going up very, 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 very slowly over a period of a year. Very low, still very low. But like after 1 year of slight rising, yeah, it made sense to take a CT scan, and the CT scan showed cancer suspected cancer in my lymph nodes in 3 places. So the para-aortic lymph nodes, this is like down below your heart. And then the bronchus, so where your windpipe just divides, this kind of area. And also under a collarbone. So the lymph nodes under your collarbone, they come from your stomach. So your stomach lymph nodes drain to here. So it's quite usual for cancer to spread to here from the lower abdomen, but I was very shocked because it's close to my brain, close to my spine. And it was very, very difficult to restart chemotherapy. I remember I had the consultation with an oncologist. It was time to go to the the chemotherapy. The nurse came to get me, and I was just stuck in the doorway. I did not want to walk into the chemotherapy room. I had to force myself in, trying not to cry and just get in and do the chemotherapy again. So I didn't know that the stomach lymph drains into the lymph nodes at your collarbone. So I was really shocked to hear that cancer had got so far, but actually it's very usual for cancer in the lower abdomen to spread to your supraclavicle lymph.
なんとかね、自分で鼓舞して今されているって言った中で、その後、こちら、この薬物療法は上がっているんですけど、少しだけ副作用がいろいろあって、ちょっと減薬をされてるんですよね。
Yes, so when I restarted the chemotherapy, I was doing a combination of 3 drugs, Avastin, irinotecan, and TS1. And yeah, the results were good, the tumors were shrinking, but the side effects are very, very, very tough. And after you have had colostomy reversal, chemotherapy side effects are very, very tough because one of the common side effects of chemotherapy, of course, is diarrhea. And if you have a short intestine and no rectum, then the quality of life is very, very, very low. So as I got the good result, I was then able to reduce the dose of one of the chemo drugs and eliminate the irinotecan. So my quality of life improved quite a lot for a while.
で、そのまま治療を続けていかれて、今はその後、腫瘍がちょっとだんだん大きくなってきていて、他の治療を模索されているっていうことなんですかね。
Yes, so the previous 3 CT scans have shown some increase in the tumor size, so it shows my current chemotherapy is not working. So my chemotherapy was second-line chemotherapy, and currently there are 2 more lines of therapy for colon cancer. Each line is less effective than the previous one, and the side effects are worse. So I'm now going to do some more unpleasant treatment, but I will find other treatments as well because there is no reason to expect a good result from the next line of treatment.
はい、ありがとうございます。そういったね、マシューさんの今も治療が続いているというふうな中でのマシューさんのお話でございました。はい、ありがとうございます。ここからマシューさんにちょっといろいろお写真をいただいておりますので、ちょっとそのお写真をちょっと聞いていきたいなと思います。マシューさん、この左のお写真、これは何ですか？どの時ですか？
So this photo was maybe a couple of weeks after my surgery. So when I was just starting the chemotherapy, and it was a very, very difficult time. I was getting used to having a colostomy bag, and I was very, very frightened because even with the treatment at that time, I was only expected to live a few months. I mean, if I got the remarkable results from the treatment, then maybe I could live 1 year. That was 8 years ago, so I think I've done quite well.
そうか、8年前なんですね。はい、ありがとうございます。この右のお写真はどの時のお写真でしょう？
So this was just, with some friends, and origami is very important, I think, because it's the form of communication we can do when there's a language barrier. So even though I have no skill at origami and my fingers are quite clumsy, I found it to be so important at the hospitals. Particularly this is actually a fox. I know you think it's a frog, but no, it's a fox. This is a paku paku kitsune. And when I'm in hospital, I always teach this to the nurses because they've never seen it before. And this is actually made from the A4 paper, not the square paper. And wherever you are, there is A4 paper available. So if, for example, there's an upset child, we can make this to help them calm down. And that's the reason I've been teaching it to nurses in Japanese hospitals. So origami is, I think, very important. We need the communication that can cross the language barrier.
いいですね。こうやって言葉じゃないコミュニケーションもできるっていうのはね、非常にいいかなということを思います。ありがとうございます。そして次、こちら。はい、こちらのお写真は、お子様に何か読み聞かせているところですか？
This was probably when my daughter was maybe 7 years old, I think. I think it's very, very important to read to children. It's one of the biggest predictors of doing well in life is the time spent reading with kids. So books have always been very important to me from a young age, and as a cancer patient, books have been a lifesaver because I read many medical books. I study nursing and oncology and surgery and those things. Before I was diagnosed with cancer, I had no knowledge of cancer. I had very little knowledge of human biology. I didn't really know about the different parts of the intestine and the different functions. So I've taught myself, and this has mainly been through books. So that's why I chose this photo to share with you.
ありがとうございます。そうやって勉強している、それを娘さんとね、見られている、そんな中かと思います。ありがとうございます。そしてですね、ここからマシューさんに一問一答各テーマについてお話を聞いていきたいと思っています。ではまずこちら、副作用や後遺症といったところ、こちらについて今まで大変だったことだったりとか、それに対してどう対応したか教えていただけますか？
Sure. So cancer treatments tend to be very, very toxic. That's how they work. Chemotherapy is particularly toxic, but also the newer treatments are very toxic as well. And I have had many kinds of cancer treatments. So generally there are 8 recognized forms of cancer treatment, which is surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, molecular target therapy, immunotherapy, hypothermia therapy, metabolic therapy, and hormone therapy. Hormone therapy is the only one I haven't had. That's usually for things like breast cancer, often then prostate cancer. I haven't had that. It's not really connected with colon cancer. Everything else I've had. So I have a lot of side effects, and I've had treatment for a very long time. And as your body gets more and more damaged, there are some side effects that build up. So, for example, when I first started chemotherapy, I did a drug called oxaliplatin. This is a platinum-based poison used to kill cancer. And it builds up in your red blood cells. So it builds up in your bones where most of your red blood cells are made. And it builds up over about 8 weeks. So can you imagine, like 8 weeks, it's building up and building up and building up in your inside your bones as these are used for a longer and longer period of time. And this reduces the red blood cells' ability to carry oxygen. So you're always kind of tired, like it's more kurushi. Like your body's not getting enough oxygen, and this builds up over 8 weeks. And then there's a little bit of a break, and then it's time for the next cycle of chemotherapy. So those kind of side effects, like being tired all the time, of course, just after surgery, you're in a lot of pains and you're not sleeping well either. But for colon cancer, we used 2 molecular target therapies, Vectibix and Erbitux, and they cause terrible skin rash. And there are 3 levels of the skin rash. So level 1, your skin is red and sore. Level 2, some spots. Level 3, it's like a acid burn. And of course, for me, I got level 3. And Asian people usually don't get such a severe rash. So the doctors are very excited. And also, there's a belief that the more severe rash means it's working better. I'm not sure the evidence for that is very strong, but they believe it. So they're very, very excited. But I was in terrible pain, and even taking a shower was so painful. The rash was on my head, on my face, went down my chest. The chemotherapy and some molecular target therapy causes a lot of skin trouble, because chemotherapy, it works by attacking the cells when they are being renewed, right? Well, as adults, we're not growing, but our skin is growing, our hair is growing, the inside of our throat and intestine, the base of the nails, So these are the places that get attacked by the chemotherapy. So very, very painful. Of course, there's the gastrointestinal side effects like diarrhea. I also take a molecular targeted drug called Avastin. That's the commercial name. The generic name is bevacizumab. Avastin stops the cancer growing more blood supplies, in theory. The problem is that it stops your body healing. In our daily life, the body's damaged all the time and it heals itself all the time. So Avastin interrupts this. So, I would get a cut and it would take weeks and weeks to heal, or things get infected easily. Avastin also causes high blood pressure. You need to treat the high blood pressure with hypertension medicine. Hypertension medicine has side effects, like a constant burning in your throat, bleeding in your nose, inflamed gums, bleeding gums. So one of the things I found most difficult is when I'm given medicine for the side effects, those medicines also have side effects. When you take chemotherapy, you're given steroids. Steroids are very, very dangerous drugs. So one steroid I took caused me to sneeze. Now, sneezing doesn't sound so bad, but if you're sneezing for an hour, and if it's just a week or 2 weeks after surgery, it's very, very bad. That steroid also caused me to stay awake most of the night and caused abdominal pains as well. So, the accumulation of side effects. So there are, when you're a long-term cancer patient, you have side effects that are acute, and then you have other chronic side effects that build up. So recently, one side effect I've got is the skin has become very smooth. So it means I drop things every day, dropping things. And also the long nerves in your arms and legs are damaged by the chemotherapy. So you're holding something and it disappears from your hand. It's terrifying. Now I'm getting the arthritis in the fingers as well, the joint pain in the fingers and toes. So all these side effects kind of build up. But when you talk to cancer patients, and I've spent 8 years talking to cancer patients, the side effect that we want to talk about most is called chemo brain. So chemo brain is like a fog in the brain. Like we can't think well, takes us a long time to make decisions, we forget things, the time disappears, and it's a very complex side effect. It's probably not one thing, it's probably a mixture of different things. So at the moment there's no treatment for it. It's something that doctors don't really understand. It's difficult to measure, it's different for different patients, different with different chemo drugs. We are told that the chemotherapy is not getting into our brain because of blood-brain barrier, but it does affect the long nerves in our bodies. So maybe that is part of the mechanism as well. So those are a few of the side effects that I've dealt with over the past 8 years.
様々なめちゃくちゃね、副作用があって、それに対する対症療法をすると、それに対するまた副作用もあってといったところですね。様々お話しいただきました。これ、今はどうですマシューさん、今困っている副作用は今ありますか？
So, yeah, I have this smoothness of the skin. So your skin, of course, has ridges on, and this is a side effect of TS1, which is a common chemotherapy tablet. The Avastin still is causing me high blood pressure and arthritis in my fingers. I don't know about the mental effects. I definitely feel more stupid than I was in the past. I don't know if I can blame that on the treatment, but yeah. So some of these drugs the effects are very persistent. And with the newer drugs, they are marketed as being very safe. But as they're used for a longer time, more side effects are discovered. So bevacizumab has now been shown to affect the thyroid gland, which regulates your metabolism, and also your kidney function is affected. More and more side effects are discovered as these are used for a longer period of time.
はい、ありがとうございます。そういったね、今も、治療を続けながらといったところで、いただいています。そして次、こちら、病院のことといたしまして、マシューさんが、やっぱりね、外国の方といったところが日本で治療されている。そんな中で、どんなふうにコミュニケーションを取ったり、どんなところが困っただったりだとか、どのように治療に向かわれているのか、やっぱり日本人だと気づけないこと多いかと思いますので、ちょっと聞かせていただけますか?
Sure. So there are many cultural differences, and so because I'm British, we have a very comprehensive health system, the NHS, National Health System, and it was envied by all of the world in the past. So, for example, in the UK, medical care is free. We don't pay anything. So that is kind of a shock for me. Like, I have to pay when I go to hospital. And in the UK, all the hospitals are joined together because there is just one system, NHS. So you don't need to take the data yourself, or everybody has all the data. Everybody has your history. Going back to your time of being a child. So those kind of cultural differences are very interesting. I think, I don't speak Japanese. I understand some Japanese, and my medical Japanese is now quite good because I spend so much time in hospital. But actually not speaking Japanese has been a huge benefit with the cancer treatment. The reason is quite strange. Because I have to see the doctors who speak English, they're usually the top doctors in the department, and they're often doctors who have studied abroad or worked abroad. So, for example, the surgeon who did my my colectomy reversal, he had worked at hospitals in the UK, had worked at hospitals in the US. So they tend to be more kind of open-minded. And they're very experienced because they're generally the head of the department. They have a lot of power. So, for example, if I need a CT scan quickly, because they're the head of the oncology department, they can just, avoid the normal system and call directly to radiology and say, "Can you see Matthew today?" So that all those kind of advantages. Obviously, now many cancer treatments are done as an outpatient, but we also have surgery, of course, as inpatient. So I spend quite a lot of time staying in Japanese hospitals. There are very interesting cultural differences. So when I did my liver surgery, it was in Koriyama. In Tohoku. Minami's Tohoku Sogo Byoin. And Koriyama people, they think they are farmers. So because of this, they get up really early in the morning. So I've had my liver surgery, and they're all waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Because they're farmers.
Wow.
So I was just so exhausted. And, when you stay in a Japanese hospital, the surgeons believe it's very important to visit every patient. So they do the rounds. And in England, maybe the surgeon would come and see if you're okay. But in Japan, it's like 7 or 8 people. And they all come and they look at you and, "Daijoubu desho?" And then they go. So this is a very important part of Japanese hospital culture because they want to get to know the face and the names. It's very, very good. But yeah, I found this kind of thing. I was disturbed a lot recovering from the surgery because people are checking you all the time. So yeah, those kind of cultural differences are very interesting. Of course, now the cancer patients are changing a lot. We have so much more knowledge about our cancer because we have YouTube, we have podcasts where we can hear from cancer patients. We have Facebook groups and online communities. We can talk to hundreds of people who have had our cancer. So I have got cancer at the time when things are changing a lot. So I think it's sometimes difficult for me to know what is a cultural issue with me being glycogen and what is just the changing of the times. Also, now, of course, cancer patients are getting younger. So there's that to consider as well, that, I got cancer in my mid-30s. Young people have a very different attitude to old people, especially in Japan where the doctor is sensei. We never question what they say. So there are all these things happening now at the time when I've got cancer. Also, we tend to talk about cancer as where it started. This person has colon cancer, this person has breast cancer. But just recently, that's changing, right? Because now we know that's not the good way to talk about cancer. It's far more important to say what genetic mutations cause this cancer. In the future, we wouldn't talk about breast cancer or rectal cancer. That will be medical history. It will be a bit strange. We'll say this person has cancer, but it will be like the name of the gene. So all this is happening at the moment, at the time I've had cancer. So it's difficult for me to separate what is like cultural issue between Japan and England, what is the issue of having cancer in your mid-30s, now mid-40s, I still feel a bit young. And what is the other issue of just the world of cancer is changing a lot. 20 years ago, almost all cancer treatment would be you are staying at the hospital as an inpatient. Now, most of the cancer treatment, we visit the hospital as an outpatient. So it's a very, very big change. Of course, I have to mention food as well, and hospital food in Japan. So particularly when you have abdominal surgery, eating is a really big issue. And, we start with, how do you say, okayu?
Okayu.
And at first it's like 99% water. And then over the days, the percentage of rice goes up a little bit. So having to get used to the Japanese food and the very no-taste miso soup. But fortunately, some nurse friends said, you should take your own soy sauce and your own furikake and all these things. But when I had my reversal surgery, it was in the time of Corona. So nobody could visit me. And I thought, I cannot tolerate this hospital food. So of course I ordered the food from Amazon and Rakuten. So the nurses were so surprised that big boxes of instant curry were arriving at Kyorin Daigaku Byoin. So I would have these boxes of food arriving because I think I stayed in hospital then for 18 days for that surgery. So that was really, really funny. So I basically stopped eating the hospital food. And in the patient lounge, there was a Denchi range microwave. So I was eating instant curry every day. But the nurses were not just surprised I was eating my own food, but they were surprised that I thought I could get things delivered to the hospital. Of course I can. I'm Gaikokujin. This is what we do. So yeah, those kind of things are really, really funny. Also, when I did my liver surgery in Koriyama, I was their first Gaikokujin patient. So I was kind of a celebrity. And it was the hospital I had done the proton beam therapy, so I knew a lot of the staff. And actually, I had some visitors who were nurses come to visit me. I was their first ever patient who had hospital staff as a visitor. They were visiting me as a friend because I made a big effort to get to know the staff. So when I was doing a proton beam therapy, I ran volunteer English lessons. I was teaching the staff English. So that was really, really interesting. So I had all these visitors who were like hospital staff. It was really funny. So yeah, those interesting cultural differences. Yeah,
very interesting. Yeah,
very strange. So maybe I'm the very difficult patient for Japanese hospitals today.
すごく、はい、いろんなね、外国の方ならではのお話もいただけたんじゃないかなと思います。ありがとうございます。次にですね、ちょっと聞きたいのが、はい、こちら、家族のことといたしまして、先ほどね、娘さんのお写真にも出てきましたけれども、お子さんにがんのことは、もう、どのタイミングで伝えましたか？
So, I have two children, my son Edward and my daughter Jessica. Edward is 15 and Jessica is 10. My cancer was found 8 years ago. So, Edward was like 7 and Jessica was kind of 2, becoming 3 years old. So for Jessica, she's only ever known me with cancer. And yeah, I just talk about it very, very directly. With my son Edward, it's a bit different because we're very, very close. Now, of course, every parent would say they're close to their child, but since Edward was 6 years old, I homeschooled him. He didn't go to elementary school. I taught him myself, homeschooling. So, yeah, we spend a lot of all day, every day together, right? So the relationship is very, very, very close. And when you are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, the world is very different and you don't really understand about time. So if your father says, oh, I might only live 1 more year, it's a very difficult thing to understand, not just because it's such a shock your father's dying, but you don't really know what a year is like. And if you imagine you're 7 years old and then you're 8 years old, your life has changed so much in 1 year as a child. The time is stretching and shrinking all the time when we're growing up. So their understanding of time is very different to us. And of course, it's very difficult for young children to understand that you have to go to hospital, have treatment, have tests. With chemotherapy, you may be fine one day and very sick the next day. You may be feeling like happy and genki and feeling really miserable. And for 5 years, I had a colostomy bag. And because the colostomy bag was very low, so just where I bend my body, it meant many things I wanted to do with my children were not possible. So, for example, in Japan, taking a bath together, going to onsen is really important, but I didn't feel comfortable doing that with a colostomy bag. So, I stopped having a bath with my daughter when she was like 3 years old. And then, I had a bath with her a few times after the reversal. Like now she's a young woman, she doesn't want to have a bath with me. So, those kind of challenges and, talking to the kids about cancers, it's complex for adults to understand. Most adults, if they haven't had cancer, they can't understand anything that we're talking about, what it's like for your plans and dreams to be destroyed in an instant. You are things are okay, life is okay, and then you get a bad scan result or a bad blood test result, and suddenly everything you were dreaming of has vanished. So yeah, talking about it with my children is difficult. All I can do is talk as directly as possible. This is what's happening. This is what I think's going to happen. This is what I'm trying to do. We haven't traveled with them really for years and years because, again, it was difficult to travel because of the chemotherapy. I can't leave for 2 weeks or something. So trying to explain to them that, sorry, we can't go traveling because of my treatment again. Yeah, that kind of thing is very difficult. And, children, of course, are just trying to make sense of the world as well. They're trying to understand when adults say something, what does it really mean? They're trying to understand about living and dying and what does that mean? What does it mean to grow up? So, yeah, it's very, very challenging. Even talking to adults about cancer is very difficult.
ありがとうございます。いやー、すごい。はい。すごいいろいろ考えさせられるなと思いました。ありがとうございます。はい。次、こちら。仕事についてなんですけれども、今仕事はマシューさん、今お休みされているっていうことで合ってますかね？
I mean, for a long, long time, I've been kind of self-employed freelancer, and for a long time, I've been working from home. So the line between working and not working is not so clear, a bit blurred. So yeah, sometimes I might do some consulting work or some coaching work. But yeah, basically I was building up my own business and it was starting to grow well. And then the cancer stopped everything temporarily. And now it's just kind of sometimes I will do some freelance work. But for many, many years I've been self-employed. So.
はい。ありがとうございます。そして次、こちら。お金や保険といった中で、お金の工面、等々ね、どうされているのか、結構ね、マシューさん、独自の解決策というか、ことをされていらっしゃいます。ちょっとお金の工面、そういったどうやって治療費を払っているか、そういったところをお話しいただけますか。
So, for cancer, there's treatment called SOC, Standard of Care. And in most countries, that would be covered by your public health insurance. So in Japan, we have Hoken, public health insurance. In Japan, there's also what's called advanced medical care. And this is covered by some types of private health insurance. And I think in very rare cases, you can apply to Hoken to pay for it, but that's complex and rare. I don't believe it ever happens. It's just in theory it could. But of course, recently, many, many cancer patients or patients with rare diseases or chronic diseases, so disease that lasts a long time, we are turning to crowdfunding to raise money. So I knew very quickly that standard of care would not help me live very long. So usually with cancer, you talk about the 5-year survival, right? So you may say, what percentage of cancer patients live 5 years? And you also say, what is the average time they live? And for my amount of cancer at that time, 5-year survival was 0.5%. And average survival was 7 to 9 months, like I mentioned before. So I knew I had to go outside of standard care. There were very few examples of humans that had lived a long time when the cancer had spread to the peritoneum. There were essentially no long-term survivors. So I knew I had to do treatment, and my sister said she would start crowdfunding. Now, I knew about crowdfunding from the business point of view. I didn't know you would do crowdfunding to pay for medical care. My image of crowdfunding was like maybe a movie director doing Kickstarter to try and make a movie, or someone wanting to record their CD. That was my image, like Kickstarter, Indiegogo. But I heard there was a type of crowdfunding with a platform called GoFundMe that works a bit differently, because you set a target, but there's no time limit. And usually with crowdfunding, you have a target and a time limit, and you raise the money and hopefully you get to the target, and then there's some time you wait, and then you get that money. That doesn't really work for a cancer patient, because you've got medical bills all the time. So the GoFundMe seemed a very good option. So my sister set up the GoFundMe, and we started raising money, and that was incredible, because I knew that to raise money, I would need to keep doing the updates, keep telling people what was going on. And I started doing YouTube. And this was a very big step for me, because before that time, I had never used my name online. So I had a Facebook account, but it was a nickname. I know you are not allowed to do it at that time, actually, but I'd never used my real name online. And the idea of like sitting in front of a camera and talking about my cancer, I couldn't imagine it, but I had to do it. I forced myself to do it basically for my kids, because I had to raise the money to live longer for the kids. But what I found was it was so useful to record those videos and talk about what was happening, what treatments I was having, what side effects I was having, what I was saying to my kids. And then I started making other videos just about things I was interested in. So, when I went for surgery, I made a video about what I took to the Japanese hospital. I showed about, I went to the 100 yen store, I got the shoyu, furikake, honey, hachimitsu. So I had all these things, and I showed this is what I'm packing. When you go to hospital in Japan, you're told to please take one small bag. Of course, I took a huge bag. I took laptop, tablet, many books, magazines, loads of clothes. So I found making the videos was really, really useful, and that kept the donations coming. It's very difficult to keep donations coming for a long time. It's very easy at the beginning, because you can say, I'm dying of cancer, I've got to get this treatment quickly. But after 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, very difficult to keep people interested. But that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. Money is a huge issue for cancer patients, right? Even if you have private health insurance, still you have all these expenses. Sometimes you can't really travel home from chemotherapy by train. You want to take a taxi, that's expensive. You may be in a hospital for a very long day, and you want to eat at the hospital, and that's always expensive and not very nice, I have to say. So there are always, money issues. Money is a really big part of having cancer.
はい、ありがとうございます。そこで、じゃあ次、こちら、伝えたいことといたしまして、マシューさんが伝えたいこと、こちらいただいております。こちら、ご説明お願いできますか？
So, I joined some Facebook groups very early on when I had found the cancer, and I got a lot of support from other patients. And the main Facebook group I was in was for stage 4 colon cancer patients. And of course, over time, unfortunately, many of them passed away. And I was still alive. So people were wondering, what was I doing to stay alive? And because I was having very unique new treatments that they didn't know much about, people were asking me, people were saying, how can they come to Japan for treatment? How can I have immunotherapy, even though the oncologist said, oh, my cancer type, you can't have immunotherapy. But actually in Japan there is some very advanced kinds of immunotherapy. And people were asking me, and I would be exchanging messages, and then I thought, oh, I should maybe make a web page about this so that I could deal with people not one by one. So it was sort of starting just as a way to save time. And then I was thinking, what do I wish I had known when I first had cancer? Because I didn't know anything about cancer. I didn't know much about human biology. So I started to write, what do I wish I had known? What is the important thing to know about money, about treatments, about side effects, about questions to ask? And also, I was always wondering who in the world is trying to cure cancer. Is there a team of people somewhere working seriously to cure cancer? And I found the answer is no. Nobody is trying to cure cancer in a serious way. There are many cancer researchers. There are many people trying to make a new treatment. But nobody is making a real plan of how to cure cancer or even just how to stop people dying of cancer. Nobody is doing this. I mean, we're in Japan. In Japan, there is no national program for checking for breast cancer. In Japan, we're a modern country. There's no national plan for checking for breast cancer. Now, I think probably everywhere in Japan you can be checked for breast cancer, but it's local government, right? There's no national plan. In Japan, even though it's one of the most modern countries in the world, people are not taking the HPV vaccine, right? Now, there's some cultural reason for that, but it's quite shocking. Yes. It's going to be a very serious problem in a few years' time, right? Because the vaccination stopped a few years ago, and HPV protects against many kinds of cervical cancer, but also anal cancer as well. And about 10 years later, there's going to be all of these cancer cases are going to be appearing. I mean, it's going to feel like an epidemic. It's very, very serious. And I kept thinking someone must be doing something, but nobody is. And especially I realized there was not much connection between doctors, researchers, and patients. Even getting cancer doctors to talk to each other is very difficult. So in most hospitals, there is not really a team system. The oncologists don't talk openly and naturally with the radiologists and radiotherapists and such. And everybody thinks their treatment is the best. And everybody thinks the side effects are caused by the other treatment. So when a surgeon hears about some side effects I'm having, they say, oh, it's because you had radiotherapy. And I say, no, actually the side effects started before the radiotherapy. It's from the surgery. So I thought, well, I've got to change this. So I started trying to set up the NPO. In Japan, it's a long and difficult process. I've just heard recently that my NPO is being approved. Still waiting for the exact date, but it will be in the next few weeks. So the NPO, the aim is to make cancer history. So it means in the future, cancer will be something that you learn about in medical school as mainly history. This is like something that used to be a big problem. Just as, there are some diseases that have almost disappeared in the world. So when my parents were children, people would die from tetanus, whooping cough, smallpox. These diseases have disappeared because of vaccinations and because of serious people working together to cure this. So the point of my NPO is help cancer patients directly but also connect cancer patients and doctors and researchers, connect everyone together. So as cancer patients, one of the very important things is to join a clinical trial. How can we join a clinical trial? It's difficult to get the clear information. When you go to visit a hospital, they generally talk about their clinical trials. They don't talk much about other clinical trials. I've experienced this personally in Japan. When you talk to oncologists about clinical trials, they think, oh, clinical trial is something you do when all the other treatment has failed. But that's the worst time to join a clinical trial because you're too sick. Or you are rejected from the trial because you have had certain treatments and they want people who haven't had this treatment to have a good trial result. So the worst time to join a clinical trial is when you have 2 months to live, 3 months, you're going to be too sick. So that is the focus of the NPO, is to take a serious approach, because I know what a cure to cancer would look like, and what we have now is completely wrong. Sometimes I look at the schedules in the big cancer conferences. So at the time of recording, in about 5 weeks, we will have a big cancer conference in Yokohama. It's called ASCO Breakthrough. ASCO is the American Society of Clinical Oncology. They have a huge conference in the US, and I look at the schedule and I'm shocked. It is nonsense. Nothing about how to actually treat and cure patients. Very, very narrow little topics. It's about tiny little improvements. So if we look at the history of chemotherapy, there are new chemotherapy drugs all the time, but the benefit is smaller each time. So a few years ago, new chemotherapy drug might add 1 year to your life. Now the newest chemotherapy drugs will add maybe 3 months. So with the newest drugs, the 5th line or something. So in a drug development, we have a joke called Eroom's law. So in technology, we talk about Moore's law. Moore's law says that about every 18 months, the cost of a chip reduces by about 50%. More, if you put the letters in the opposite order, Eroom. So the cost of drug development is going up and up and up. The new drug, the price is going up and up and up. So we need to change that. And I know what it should look like. And I look at the situation now and I see it's completely wrong. So that is the point of my NPO. Unfortunately, I am struggling with the cancer recurrence. So I'm in 2 fights. One fight is stay alive, and the other fight is change cancer treatment completely, because what we have now is not going to get us where we need to be. It's completely wrong. I can tell by looking at it, it is wrong. We're not on the right path. We're on completely the wrong path, actually.
ありがとうございます。そして、次、こちら、少しだけがんノートのインフォメーションちょっとさせてください。様々なですね、方々のいろんな経験談が一冊の本になりました。またこちらも面白かったら見てほしいなと思っておりますし、またここまで見てくださっている方にはですね、もしよかったらがんノートのチャンネル登録や高評価ボタン、そしてコメントなど残してもらえると嬉しいなと思っております。よろしくお願いします。はい、それでは最後になんですけれども、はい、マシーさん最後、皆さんに向けてのメッセージをいただいております。
So my message to you is please study. I think that as a cancer patient, we need to become an expert on our own cancer. So there are many, many kinds of cancers. In the past, people talked about just the place where the cancer began, like breast cancer, colon cancer, liver cancer. That's changing now. But also 20% of all cancers are rare cancers, because because there are so many varieties. So it's possible that you have a cancer where there is no specialist doctor for you. You have a cancer that is being treated by a GI oncologist, but that's not their area of expertise. But also within any kind of cancer, there are many varieties. So for colon cancer, there's a big difference between the colon cancer on the left of the body and the right of the body. The cancer behaves differently, responds differently to treatment. For breast cancer, there's a big difference between HER2 positive and HER2 underexpressive cancers. So there are many, many kinds, and your oncologist is dealing with many patients, and they have many things to do and many things to understand. So as a cancer patient, it's important that you educate yourself. And now in 2024, we have so many ways to educate ourselves. It's so easy. We can watch YouTube videos. You can watch the Gan Note has so many videos. You can learn directly from patients who are just like you. You can learn from their experience. We can learn from Facebook groups or other online communities. We can now access medical papers online. So when I'm talking to my doctors, they're talking about treatments they're recommending, and I've often read the same papers that they have. So that allows me to make a better informed decision. But there are many other ways we can study. There are online courses for learning about biology and about medicine. We can study how to make decisions. We don't need to just study cancer directly, but how do you choose between 2 or 3 or 4 options? We can study about communication. If you have to talk to your friends and family about these very difficult topics, it's worth studying a bit about communication, how to talk to your children about cancer. Many cancer NPOs provide wonderful educational information. So in the UK, we have Macmillan, who publish small books, and you can download them all for free on their website, and they're available in different languages as well. I don't think Japanese, unfortunately, but many, many languages. So there are many ways we can educate ourselves, and it's really important that we get the facts and can make a good decision that matches our own situation. Oncologists often want to talk about things in general terms. So if they are not sure what to do, they'll say, generally speaking, colon cancer patients experience this. But that's not good enough for you. You need to know about your situation. What's the best thing to do for you? I was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 36. One of the things I learned very, very quickly is that age was not taken into consideration when planning the treatments. Well, as a 36-year-old, my lifestyle is very different from someone who is 66 or 76. But that was not considered at all with the treatments, and particularly with the side effects. I had 2 young children. I wanted to play with my young kids. So it's really important that you learn about your situation. What genetic mutations do you have? What are the new treatments and new trials that may be relevant to you? How is the treatment going to fit with your job? If you're working, how are you going to manage that? Are there treatments that can be spread out over a longer time so you experience less severe side effects and can continue working? So it's really important to study this, learn about your situation, your type of cancer. Then you'll be able to ask better questions, and most importantly, you'll understand the answers. So my message to you is, please study.
はい、ありがとうございました。良いオプションをね、決断するために、勉強していくっていうところは、大事になってくるのかなっていうことを、はい、私は思いました。ありがとうございます。いや、マシューさんはね、本当イギリスから 日本に来られて、で、日本のことを本当にもう勉強されて、治療も日本で受けられて、様々な苦労があったと思いますが、今それを、乗り越えて、治療もされていらっしゃいます。乗り越えてというか乗り越えつつ、治療されていらっしゃいますので、こういったね、マシューさんの話が、皆さんのね、誰かの見通しの一つになれば嬉しいなということを思っております。はい。今日はこれにてがんノートminiの収録終わっていきたいと思うんですけれども、マシューさん、どうでした？
It's very interesting. I enjoy talking about cancer a lot. I wish I didn't have cancer, but yeah, it's a very interesting and important topic. And we know that currently 1 in 3 women will get cancer and probably 1 in 2 men will get cancer. So it's something that affects us all.
はい、ありがとうございます。はい、これにてがんノート終了としていきたいと思います。また皆さん、次の動画でお会いしましょう。それでは皆さん、またね。バイバーイ。